Thank you. I'd like to nominate Councillor Valentine, if I may, to be chair. Thank you.
Seconded. Thank you very much. So the next business is to elect a vice chair. I nominate Councillor Edmonds. Thank you very much. Well done, Councillor Edmonds. So, welcome everybody. Questions from members of the public or members of the council? No questions? Thank you.
Thanks. My name is Sam Price and I'm the Chief Executive of Beyond Detention. We're a charity that's been providing emotional and practical support to people held in Yarlswood Immigration Removal Centre for almost 25 years. And as such, we can offer relevant and timely information to the local authority relating to the increasing numbers of children being detained there by the Home Office. Our staff and volunteers are often the first people to whom the children disclose their real age, and we have made referrals to the integrated front door in 13 of the 19 cases mentioned in the member's note. Why then are Children's Services not engaging with us despite our numerous offers of support? Why are they not keeping us updated regarding the progression of cases, meaning vulnerable children are being left without answers, sometimes for months? I have personally experienced how heartbreaking it is to see these children week after week and not be able to give them any news at all because we simply do not know what is happening. Will the team accept our offer of support and work with us to find solutions? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Harmesh or Jonathan? Yeah. Sam? Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you for your question. So first of all, obviously none of us want to see any delays in relation to information to children. You'll see from the briefing note to this committee that the change of use for Yarlswood Immigration Centre has created some pressure for the team, and that has been real. There is absolutely a commitment to continue to work alongside any partner agencies that are supporting those children, and therefore, having had a conversation now with my head of Parenting Together, Mel Field, we are happy to offer a 30-minute meeting each week in which we'll be able to update on any progress. Obviously, one of the things that we will require, and I'll hand over to Mel in a moment, is that you have the authority for us to be able to discuss that information with you, which I'm sure you'll appreciate, because we want to make sure that obviously we're following all due process. Just to assure you, as I say, if there have been delays in communication, I apologise that. It has put some significant pressure on the team. And secondly, it has resulted in some recruitment and retention difficulties. So we will endeavour to absolutely engage with you, and Mel will be able to offer some more information on that.
Thanks very much. Do you have a follow-up question? No, that's great. Or a statement? You're okay for now. Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. So any other questions? Questions from members of the committee? No? Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a question probably for Chris Morris. A number of parents have been in touch with us recently concerned about the provision of holiday clubs for children with physical and emotional difficulties. So there seems to be a reduced provision, and parents are really struggling with options for summer holiday care. So we just want to find out what's going on. Has there been reduced funding, or are there problems with commissioning? And if so, what can we do about it?
Yeah, thank you for your question. I believe the source of some of the anxiety may be that a long-established holiday play scheme from MENCAP, which has been running very successfully in Bedford Borough for well over 25 years, supporting significant numbers of children. So 190 children are supported through MENCAP every single year. This year, not through lack of funding or any other reasons, just simply because their main venue, being Ridgeway, is having significant works being undertaken on it this summer. So they were not able to provide a club this summer. Now, that was flagged pretty early on, and we worked with MENCAP in searching suitable alternatives. So we wrote to a number of schools in Bedford Borough, I must say, were incredibly accommodating, showing Lauren, who is a brilliant volunteer who runs MENCAP in addition to her day job working in one of our special schools. And it just felt that the trustees and Lauren felt that because they couldn't find a venue that actually would meet the physical disability needs, so for example, changing places, toilets, they could have run a provision, but they would have had to turn away some families, and actually the trustees felt that actually they didn't want to be doing that this year. So it took a very difficult decision to write to the families to say that this year they were unable to run a provision. Now, that is a decision that was made by a brilliant charity that supports a number of families in our area, and actually is, at Bedford Borough we do provide funding to MENCAP, and actually it was quite pleasing to see in the letter that they referenced the support they'd had from the local authority in trying to mitigate for some of the challenges. That doesn't minimise the anxieties of those families who feel that actually, what is this level of support? So what we can say in reassurance to those families is, as soon as it was clear that MENCAP were not able to provide a summer holiday scheme, we have a list of all the families that were supported through that scheme last year. We've reviewed that with our Children with Disabilities team. We've identified any families that we know. We've contacted families that we do know. We've looked at whether they can have individual packages of support. So, for example, can we put in for those families where that respite would be really crucial over those 6 weeks? And look at those individual packages of support. Through our holiday activities and food programme, we also have what's called a lot. So we break up the schemes into different lots, and we have a lot for children and young people with special educational needs. I'm really pleased to say that we've had bids for that. So again, through our holiday activities and food programme, we will be providing dedicated SEND-specific holiday schemes for those children who meet the criteria for HAF. We are also continuing to support both Autism Bedfordshire and Embrace to run their very popular holiday play schemes. So again, we provided funding for both of those, as we have done in previous years as well. And also through the Summer of Send, we're looking at an increased number of family activities. Now, not all of those will be respite, drop and go in terms of for those schemes, but a lot of them are sometimes what we'd call in-house, within the family, so opportunities for family and siblings to have opportunities to have fun activities together. So we're looking at that. So again, in answer to the original question, there's not been any change in circumstance or any decision made or a commissioning issue or any funding issues. It was simply a decision made, understandably, whilst recognising it was difficult. And I don't want to play that down. I've sat and I spoke to the trustees who made that really difficult decision, and I know they really wrenched with it. But it is a significant provider who is not providing this summer, but really pleasingly will be able to provide next summer as well. I don't know, Wendy, from a holiday activities and food, if there's anything else to add on that.
Thank you, Chris. So just to, again, provide assurance that the holiday activities and food programme is going ahead. The work that has been done to go out to tender to procure providers for this holiday is on track, and we have had a significant number of providers who have returned bids to be a part of the scheme, which is very popular, and we know how important it is to families. As Chris has said, we have the 3 lots that are in place, and that includes the provision for children with
additional needs and special educational needs. So that continues to be in place.
Quick additional questions. Have the parents been made aware of all this? Because there seems to be either some kind of lack of communication, or because otherwise I don't understand why parents are raising this. So are they aware of what's been happening? Have they been offered the place? Just because, I mean, we're nearing the holidays, as you know, so I can understand that there is some concern about all of this.
I think one of the reasons why I think you'll be seeing the level of anxiety or concern is the traditional timescales for all Embrace, Autism Bedfordshire and MenCap to enrol children and young people onto those schemes was traditionally around about April time. And so, you know, MenCap taking the decision around about early May to not run, you know, there is a lag between us and the holiday activities and food programme becoming live. So that anxiety. So our communications and working closely with parent care reform and making sure that we have those discussions through the forum, whilst recognising, you know, what is provided may not be an absolute replica of what MenCap provide, because MenCap provide, you know, we are part funders of that, but they, you know, they deliver it. So yeah, we continue to put communications on, but also recognising that, you know, those families that have relied on MenCap and, you know MenCap and have, you know, experienced that won't have MenCap this year. And so I think is, you know, that may well be what you are seeing in that anxiety from that moving forward. I think in terms of timescales of commissioning and procurement is we are beholden to when we get given the grant and looking at when we can then go out to tender and bring in those providers, but similar to all other HAF schemes that we would have, we would be going live with families able to book onto those within the regular timescales. So no delays there. It's just slightly different to MenCap's usual timescales that they would book onto.
So just one question, what are the regular timescales then? When can people sign on?
So we're working with providers now who have responded to the tender process. That is, we're just finishing that off, and we're working with those providers in parallel to agree the process and the timescales. We hope to have the vouchers ready to go in the next week or so.
Thank you.
Wish to make a statement? Or?
No, it's fine.
Okay, so if we can go on to item 4, apologies for absence. We have an apology from Councillor Gallagher. So next item is the minutes of the last meeting. Are people happy with the accuracy of the minutes, those who are present?
Yeah. Oh.
Sorry.
Move them, Chair. Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. Jolly good. So, disclosure of local and/or disclosable pecuniary interests. Do any members of the committee have any interest to disclose this evening? Oh.
Just a question. It's a question I always ask, and I always get the same answer, but it won't stop me asking it again. When we start a new committee, new year, obviously we do have, well, we can have new councillors on this committee. Is there a need or not to declare an interest if we are school governors?
I think, Chris, perhaps you'd like to say something. I think we've come across this before. I think we concluded that I think we didn't need to declare it. But do you have an opinion on that?
I think in the part, I mean, to be honest, Councillor Meader, we've probably had some sessions and some series where we have declared it at the beginning and then declared it as so it's logged. And we've had others where we haven't. I think certainly if there's an agenda item that specifically relates to what I would say is many of the papers looking at the forward plan where I'm bringing overall academic attainment and breaking it down by schools and having lists of, I would suggest that if members are school governors, then that would be, you know, a disclosable at that point. However, I think many of you have heard before in terms of I'm not the most au fait on what should and shouldn't be disclosed, but I would say to veer on the side of caution, maybe to disclose it as a point if you were a school governor, because especially, yeah, therefore technically you could be, you know, proprietors of and, you know, overseers of. So I think it's probably worth disclosing the information.
Well, thank you for that. So in that spirit, I'll disclose I'm the governor at Kempston Academy.
Yeah, I'm also a governor at Daubney Academy. Thank you.
That's it, I think. Okay, thank you. So we've done that in a really proper way. So if we can go on to item 7, progress on the Children's Services Improvement Plan. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you. Looking through this, it struck me that actually quite a number of the indicators on the plan are areas that form into sort of business as usual, rather than a specific point at which that is it, it's done and completed. So it made me think that actually, you know, take for instance the first chunk really, which is looking at visits, and they wax and wane depending on a number of factors. And it made me think that perhaps there's a better way of trying to capture the healthiness of the system and the teams and the practice, rather than a point in time at which that's it, signed off, because it's never signed off. It's ongoing. So, yes, I think maybe we need to reword or rework how we try and measure ourselves more accurately than just a point in time, which is when this was created. There are some on there that still are points in time, and I think some of those will slip or have slipped because we have not yet populated the new structure which those timelines were based upon. We are, but we're not ready yet. So I think that's why there is some of those stand out as not done when the date is fast approaching or has passed. But just on the visits, they have improved this week. So instead of 86 for child protection, they're now 95. Child in need is now 80, and children looked after is now 93. So you can see it's a fluid measure. So I'm not sure whether it is helpful to go through. Perhaps it's more, I'd invite you to point out if there are ones that you are more curious about than others, and I can try and help you understand or throw some light on it.
Hilda.
I did have a question following on what you just said, because I was struggling with kind of all the ambers, for example, on there, looking at the date, because in many cases, the deadline was long past. So technically, that should be a red. And I hear that there may be other ways of capturing this, but we really should look for other ways, because I can't assess whether there is sufficient progress. So because I can't assess that, there's kind of almost going to be a lack of accountability, because how do I know? Objectively, I would say, well, you're not amber because your deadline has passed. So it would be really useful if you could find a better way of communicating that with us, because I think what for us is important is that we see improvement, that we see progress, and that the pace of progress is sufficiently fast. And I can't assess that.
Yes, that's fair enough. So maybe then if I can circulate a draft way, or sort of, you know, interpret it another way, so you can see how it was and how the new version, if you like, and then you can give a view on whether you think that captures and gives you what you want, really, in terms of seeing how well we're doing or not.
Okay, any other questions? Philippa.
Thank you. It follows on actually from what Councillor Hendricks just said. I suppose what I'm not necessarily understanding is what the implications are with some of the slippage. So some of that, obviously, the slippage is time. If a deadline is missed, a deadline is missed. But at the same time, we can't just say, oh, well, never mind. I know you wouldn't, but it's then, okay, so how do we catch up on what is the implication in terms of the service delivery, and also, I suppose, sometimes also financially of that slippage, and how do we make it up? So I think I would really like to see that, because then I can understand what it means contextually for the service and for the budget. And I think, for example, one of the ones that I would, there's some where they're red, and I would quite like a bit of an update, to be honest with you, on all the ones that are red. I don't know if we can do that tonight, because clearly those are the ones that kind of stand out to me as the biggest issue. And I don't know if it's possible to have, on the other reports, for the KPIs, we've got kind of the direction of travel arrow. I find that quite helpful, because even if you're green but you're going down, you have to look at it. So that would be really helpful. So yeah, my question therefore really is, could we have that data? Can we have an explanation tonight about the reds and the implications for the service and financially of those, please?
Yep, that's fair enough. So the red ones are primarily, I think quickly looking at it, I think it's located pretty much in one part of the service at the moment, which is the connect team or the assessment team. That's what the function of that team is. So it is based upon, as it suggests, completing assessments. There's two things to that. One is that we complete more assessments than pretty much most other Eastern region authorities. And at the moment, we aren't completing them anywhere near what we used to be able to complete them in. We used to be pretty much 95%, we're now 60%. So we have dropped off significantly. And there are reasons for that, and we know that we've struggled to recruit fully into that team. And we've also, perhaps I think more significantly, we have struggled to fill the manager positions in that team as well. We are on the cusp of restructuring that team. So at the moment, the old structure, if you like, was one manager, 4 deputy managers called APs, and then a team of social workers up to 18, which we never got to 18. But we're restructuring it so that we will have 3 team managers, each overseeing a pod of 5 social workers, and they will rotate, which gives some sense of space for the workers that have just finished being on duty to have a couple of weeks to actually work through the work that they've just been allocated. As well as that, we are looking to improve the capacity of the front door, which I think will look to reduce the flow of work into that assessment team as well. So that should counter that issue of us doing more assessments than our neighbours do. So that sort of compounds a lot of things. And the Section 47s, we are doing more of those than other authorities in the Eastern region. And again, it stems from, I suppose it's maybe not risk averse, but an anxiety when you are overwhelmed with work. You can see that it is easier to look for a process and to be absolutely sure, rather than when teams are more buoyant, they've got the space to think more creatively and be more curious, and to have the capacity to actually be more involved with the family, rather than at the minute when it is more tight, if you like. So I think that's why we're seeing more of those activities which, perversely eat up their time as well. So it doesn't help. And we've been talking about it just this morning, and we've got sessions with an authority in London that are going to help us work through and think about our decision making for children that are at risk, and are we making the right decisions really? Are we being process-led rather than thinking what is going to help this child or family better? So that sort of ties in with that. So I would think that as we move into the new structure, we get the team fully staffed, then these things will calm down and you will see the indicators lowering. And then when they do, then the practice improves. It's an obvious thing. It's very hard to improve practice when caseloads are increasing. So those things are all pretty much connected. So it is just, It is getting the managers in, which there is an ad out. I was looking through the applications just this morning to see the deadline is on the 11th, so it's Wednesday. And if we can get 3 managers and then the social workers, that will set us fair to work more effectively in that part of the service, which then calms a lot down.
Paul, I think you had a question.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose actually I was going to echo what Councillor Hendricks and Councillor Moran, is it Moran? Martin Moran Bryant. Sorry, I was getting mixed up. So yeah, I mean the way the information is presented probably doesn't give us sort of the clear direction of travel. One of the ones that I noticed actually, which was in the amber, which from previous emails you probably know that I'm concerned about, is the unregistered placements. We're meant to be aiming for, was it 100% reduction, and yet we still have 4 in those placements, one of which isn't even registering for Ofsted. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, we do have 4 children at the moment in unregistered placements. 3 are registering, which is good, and we're just waiting for Ofsted. They're in the next cycle, the current cycle, to be visited and to then be given their registration, which would be great. We've said here, and we said to Ofsted, we don't want any. That is still the case. We do, unfortunately, have one child who has, I suppose, I mean, yeah, we would like to have avoided it. That's the truth of it. But there was a clear timeline that we were working to, and we were struggling to find anywhere that would meet his needs that was registered. And so then we had to consider an unregistered one, which is what we have done. We are still looking for a registered one, and I would be hopeful that that is the case, because there is no reason why he should be in an unregistered one. So with some more time, we might be able to find one for him. And actually, well, I won't get into more details, but yeah, I would hope that that is the case, that he's not in an unregistered one for much longer. And then we will return back to the 3 that are in unregistered, and by then, Ofsted may have done visits and registered the 3 of them. I would like to have none. I'd like to come in here one day and we don't have any. And I think it's possible, and it feels quite close, actually. And, you know, when we had our focus visit, they were very curious about what we had done, to the point I became suspicious of myself, really. What have we done? You know, but actually, they were really complimentary about the work we put in and the focus we got in to reduce it from, I think it was 16, down to when they visited 3, with the ambition of having none.
Thank you, Chair. Just a more of a general question, actually. I mean, it's already been highlighted that the plan in front of us, or the improvement plan in front of us, is quite difficult to follow. And it doesn't give me all the information I want, I don't think. But just a general question: are the officers in general happy with the sort of the pace that we're moving at and the improvements that are being made? Are you comfortable with that at the moment? Thank you.
Oh, go on. Thank you for the question. Are we comfortable with the pace change? No. It's a short answer to that. There have been some issues that have delayed some of the progress that we've wanted to make. So obviously one of the most important issues for us is to have a capacity and resilience within the workforce. Recruitment and retention has been a challenge and remains a challenge. And one of the things that has prevented some of or delayed some of the progress that we wanted to make in terms of recruitment has been a reconciliation process on the budget that we had to go through. So it was necessary, because we needed to make sure that the budget actually accurately reflected what our proposed restructure, staffing structure under the restructure, what the budget was, what we required in terms of budget to make that happen. That's now been completed, and hence why there has been a push on the recruitment, and there is going to be and that is now starting to take place. As you'll appreciate, just because we have now got the permission and authority to go to recruit, there is still a process. So one of the benefits, of some of the revised regulations, particularly around use of agency staff, means that agency staff needed to give us sufficient notice. What that means in terms of recruiting is if we're recruiting agency staff, then also they have to give adequate notice to where they're working at the moment. So that has created, some issues. But obviously our drive is for permanent recruitment, and we have to make sure, if we're going through that permanent recruitment process, that that's done properly, diligently, because we want to make sure that we have the right calibre of people joining us, so that we don't have this constant churn and change. So there have been some things that have delayed some of that progress, but as I say, that we're now picking up some of the pace on that. Also, just want to say in response to some of the questions around the budget as well. So a significant piece of work has been done around unregistered placements. As Jonathan has mentioned, we had a recent published focused visit that was published on the 1st of June, which is available on the Ofsted website. And that recognised the work that we've done around unregistered placements. The area of focus in terms of budget pressures is our residential placements. And we still have some sufficiency issues in terms of foster placements that we are working on. We've partnered with Reconnect, and that work is starting to bring some benefits in terms of identified foster carers that we may be able to transition some of those children in those more expensive residential placements to. As you'll appreciate though, even when we do that, we have to make sure that's done within the right care planning timescale for those individual children. We are talking about children, we have to make sure that the right assessment is completed, that we're not moving them just because we want them out of those expensive residential placements. They absolutely have to meet those children's needs, because what we don't want is for any unplanned placement moves to have a detrimental impact on the child's well-being and stability of placement. So also you'll see from some of the performance indicators, for example, like our stability indicator, that has gone down. But that's not always a bad thing, because actually we've moved some of those children, as I say, a significant number of children out of unregistered placements, but it still counts as a placement move. And other children, where there have been planned placement moves, actually, so they still have an impact on that indicator, but they are positive moves for children. So for one example I can point to are the number of children who are now conclude either, when we're in care proceedings or with these children, that we conclude with those children being placed with special guardians under a special guardianship order. Now, sometimes that's another placement move, but actually that's a really positive, permanent option for those children. So I think some of the detail behind some of the indicators need to be understood. I absolutely take the point, and looking at it again, is that perhaps what we need to develop is something that is easily understood by members of this committee, because we absolutely welcome that scrutiny, and it's right that you dig into that detail. And maybe we need to look at some of the other reports that we are using to report to things like the weekly recovery meeting I have with Chief Executive and Section 151, and also some of the reports that go to Children's Services. Obviously, under the revised governance structure, we have a Children's Services Improvement Board, so we can certainly look at how that information is best presented to this committee. What would be really helpful is if there are any particular issues or if there is a preferred presentation format that you would find helpful, then please do share that, and we will try and make sure that it's one, as up to date as possible, so you're getting the latest information. And I would point all committee members to the the regular performance information that is circulated as well. But we can certainly look at revising some of this information and how it's presented, so it gives you an opportunity to have, you know, as I say, dig into some of the detail and question where you think that you say that the pace may not have been fast enough, and what those implications are, which I think is a really important question. What's the implication in terms of outcome for children, and then also things like budget pressures. So more than happy to take that away, and we'll come up with a revised format, and that's perhaps something that we can circulate in advance of the next committee for comments from committee members, if that's acceptable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one possible suggestion for that. I think so we've got the KPIs there. I guess that is your end goal, or where you want to get to. What is sometimes unclear to me are what are the steps we need to take to get there, and have these steps been taken, or can we tick that off? And I don't know whether that's one way of portraying this.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Hendricks. So what sits underneath this is a very, very detailed improvement plan, which breaks down, I mean, it's pages and pages long, and I can see Mel and Jonathan nodding to my left. That is gone through in fine detail at various other meetings that we've had. I've made reference to our revised governance structure. So there are performance clinics, there's a director's assurance board, there's a raft of information that sits underneath this, which is quite difficult to summarise the amount of activity and also the detail into a sort of condensed report for this board. But I can absolutely assure you that there is a much more detailed plan, and that the progress on those various work streams is monitored very carefully, and as I say, is then reported up through to Children's Services Improvement Board. In relation to your question about how you can see the milestones and the pace, some of that is quite difficult to report on. So, for example, when we talk about training and development for our managers, we might be able to report, yes, X amount of training sessions have taken place, for example, or X amount of mentoring sessions. Actually, what you will need to see is how that translates into, so what impacts that having in terms of practice. And sometimes that takes a bit of time for that to, so we can report on, yes, we've done that, but it's in terms of embedding that into practice, and then seeing those practice improvements, and that increased oversight and grip resulting in improved outcomes. And so sometimes there is naturally a bit of a lag, because we put something, we have to embed that into practice, and that takes a bit of time in terms of until you start to see a real impact on outcomes. But we'll have a think about how we can perhaps report that in a more helpful way. And as I say, we have got a much more detailed improvement plan, which I think I've said before, happy to share with the committee if that's helpful. It is extremely detailed, and it's extremely long, but we can share that, and it may well be helpful for you to look at all of the work streams under that, and therefore you'll be able to plan any questions that you may have, or areas of scrutiny, which hopefully will be helpful for this committee.
Did you have another question?
Sorry, microphone on. In the first instance, I think, so I think, as you probably know, I'm not pro writing reports for their own sake, because I know how precious officer time is, and you're already writing so much for various committees. But I do think that actually it would be really helpful to understand the detail. So I know how much detail there is sitting underneath this, but it is very hard, as has been said tonight, to understand when you only see the high level. Sometimes if you at least glimpse at what's going on underneath, you then have an idea of how you're getting to that point. So personally, I wouldn't want you to be producing additional reports because I don't think you have time, and that's probably not good use of your time. But I would welcome, if there are, if there are appropriate minutes that we can see from, the recovery meeting or the detailed improvement plan, I think that would be really helpful if that's possible to share with us. My question then about the managers, I think the idea of having more managers with a closer focused team is really positive, and I totally take your point about how long it takes things to embed, because obviously with the housing team, obviously we recruited a lot of new members to that team. That takes a very long time to embed, and for the training, as you say, to kind of embed into the practice. Did you mention with the manager posts, when are the timescales for actually getting them in post? In terms of the recruitment? I know you said that we're going to have them, but do we know roughly when we're hoping to have them in post?
One is already in-house, so that they need to move over. So that may be next week, which is great. The other two posts, we will need to, I mean, we could more easily get agency workers in, but actually we want to get permanent people in, and I think we've got enough of a selection of candidates come forward that we think we should be able to fill the team with 3 permanent workers, which gives stability instantly, and you build up practice straight away. So normally, the longest it would probably take is, let's say, 2.5, 3 months to get that process completely to the point where someone is able to start. So that means we may need to look at how we use our resources to make sure that we're fortunate in having managers in the team at the moment, but they are not going to continue to be managers for reasons I don't need to go into, but they can add capacity while we are in this limbo, if you like, moving from one structure to another. So I would think that we will add to what we currently have quite quickly, and then we will just add the permanent workers and wind down the existing managerial structure that we have that's not part of the new structure going forward. So it should, in my mind, it should be fairly seamless, but we will arrive at a point in the new school term, if you like, with 3 permanent managers in that team.
I was going to say just a final point of clarification from me. So we're talking about the restructure taking place within about 3 months, and that would mean that the caseloads should come down, which should mean that we're reducing these red blobs that we don't like to see.
Yeah, just a quick comment, because Hamish, you did kind of emphasize that there is like the whole governance around and the improvement plan and the Children's Services Improvement Board, etc. I just want to be clear that I don't think that necessarily supersedes the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So so we are here to ask those public questions and strive for the accountability and the transparency. So in that respect, it is important that we are au fait with the information that is there, but that we haven't seen. Just wanted to make that point.
I completely agree. I think this is a really important committee and absolutely should have access to that information, and also, as it says on the tin, it's overview and scrutiny. And I think, we would always welcome, as a service, we always welcome that scrutiny, both internally and externally. As you know, so prior to our recent focused visit from Ofsted, we invited a peer review on that particular area of work because we wanted to make sure that we had some external helpful scrutiny to help us with our improvement plans. That did help with our focused visit. We've also, as part of our improvement programme, We have secured some support via the DFE for sector-led improvement work, again through external partners to come and assist us. We really welcome the scrutiny because it's so important, and it's important that members do understand some of the challenges that the service faces, but also what efforts are being made to try and address some of those challenges. And rightly so, to identify where that progress is perhaps not as fast as it could be and understand the reasons why. And I suppose from my perspective as DCS, what I'd say is what's helpful from this committee is then to make representations around where further support or what else could be done to support a service that's on that improvement journey. So absolutely, and if, as I say, we are open, transparent, welcome to any scrutiny on and happy to take any questions. So we will look at, as I've said, we will look at the presentation of some of that performance information if that makes that process easier for members.
Thank you very much. So if we can go on to the next item, which is sorry.
Thank you. So it was just about the focused visit and the letter. I know that the letter is available on the website, but I wondered if it could be just shared with members of the committee if everyone hasn't read it yet, because I think it's actually really helpful in terms of it does give an overview, and it picks out some, I think, really positive areas. And I think that's important for service users and for officers to know that where things are positive and to understand the work that's happening. Obviously, it very clearly picks up on areas that we know already that needs to be worked on, but I think actually it's very, very helpful to have that point in time, as you say, from an external body. And I think if members haven't all got it, then it would be really helpful if we could have a copy.
Yeah, it's a public document anyway.
Yes, it is a public document, but it's helpful. We can make sure that is circulated. Yeah. So just for clarity, all of our inspection reports are published on the Ofsted website. So if members want to access that, all you have to do is punch in Bedford Ofsted, and there it is. It will be at the top. So that focused visit letter was published on the 1st of June 2026. And yes, thank you. We are not complacent. We still have a lot of work to do, and I need to make that really clear. What this focused visit did identify is that there's some real positives and strengths in the service on which to build on. There were some areas to improve. There always are when our friends come and visit. But I was really pleased about the feedback was the commitment of our staff in terms of making sure that they are focused on achieving the right permanence options for children. They talk about, most children are in long-term foster care and live in stable and well-matched homes, obviously really important. The importance that we place on sibling relationships and how we work on that. There, as I say, I could go on. There are a number of positives, but as I say, I repeat, this does not make us complacent. In fact, it's even more. It prompts us to do even more and improve that the pace of that improvement journey. And it does make specific reference to those unregistered children's placements, which we have reduced significantly. I think we were at 17, 18 when we had our ILACS inspection, full inspection in July 2025. Say we're now down to 3 or 4. And 3 of them, we are just awaiting Ofsted to go and visit them so they can go through their registration process. But also, I think at the end of the letter, I think it's also important to point out that, and again, this is, an objective view, and the Ofsted talk about leaders having an accurate understanding of the quality of performance, of permanence planning, and I'll just read out this bit, that improvement plans are coherent and address the identified areas, including the need to reduce workloads in specific teams and increase capacity to meet children's needs. So they looked at our plans for improvement, and they said, yes, they make sense, yes, they're coherent. They again said, look, it'd be good to see some more pace. We all want to see that pace. That has been impeded slightly because of the recruitment issues that we are having. So even, as I say, and I'm really grateful, we're really grateful for the additional capacity, so resource that Children's Services have been given. That doesn't automatically translate into the rest of people coming in and joining us, but we're working hard on that. And as I say, if we move to our new structure, that will support our improvement journey. But I just want to assure committee as well that we're not just reliant on that. There's a lot of work going on anyway. So, yeah, I would encourage you, all members of the committee, to have a read of that. But we're happy to circulate. We can circulate it by email as well after this meeting.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, everybody. So if we can go on to the next item, which was the Q4 performance report. So do you want to say a few?
Chair, sorry to jump in. Sorry, thank you, Chair. I'm sure Jonathan will go through that. In some of the areas we've sort of already discussed in terms of the improvement. So again, I think there's probably some work that we need to do around how that is best. Maybe we have one report that covers those key areas rather than having that report and this report. But we can, we can do some work on that. But I'll leave that there. And if there are any questions specifically on that performance outturn, then I'm sure Jonathan will be able to respond.
I mean, the performance report has obviously got education elements on it, for example, as well, which obviously weren't on the previous report.
Absolutely.
Philippa.
Thank you. So it's quite a specific question. You mentioned about the stability of placements earlier on, and I totally understand what you're saying about sometimes there is a positive move that needs to take place. Is that a national indicator or is that a local one?
So placement stability is a national indicator?
Sorry, are you happy? Yes. Happy with that? Any other questions? As I say, on the social care aspect, we effectively did go through most of it on the previous report, talking about the improvement plan. There are some other statistics, other stats to do with education and so on, whether people have got any queries on those, any questions? If not, thank you very much. So if we go on to the item that we specifically asked for at the last meeting, the last municipal year, which was progress on Gadsby Street and Bunyan Road. So starting with Gadsby Street.
Good evening all. So I'm sure you're all aware Gadsby Street is providing a mixed use of services for various care leavers as well as families with babies. The contract was let with Ash Construction for a pre-contract services agreement in February. That includes all of the prerequisite surveys, design, etc. to get us through to planning. The current programme is so at the time of writing, I will qualify this as over a week ago, the current programme was for a planning submission on the 3rd of July. Since then, we have taken the view that given the listed nature of the building and the fact it's in a conservation area, we're better served to go for a pre-application advice first. And that's purely to ensure that our planning application does go through. That was in consultation with members of the planning team have suggested that, so we think there's probably about 3 to 4 week delay on that. That won't stop us progressing with the design. The intention is to keep designing and keep doing the detailed work that we would have been doing anyway. So the planning application will probably, in truth, be delayed by, I'd say, about 2 weeks, so mid-July. That would take us to the end of September for determination and commencement of the contract in mid-October. Completion, we're estimating June 27 at the moment. That is based on square meterage and the information that we have at the moment. They are still doing intrusive surveys on 36B, which is the listed building. We couldn't get on with that because the building was still being let to the ICANN and there were still tenants in there, so we couldn't do things like asbestos and the structural surveys that are taking place. Other than that, we're progressing well. We have a design that the end user team and myself and our technical reviewers are all happy with, and we are proceeding with works.
very much. So any questions from members of the committee?
Yeah, thank you. I just wonder whether this June 27 may be over-optimistic, given that it's an old building, a listed building, different, it will be kind of different users. So that's the first question, is it over-optimistic? You know how building works go. And then the second question is, what is the implication of this kind of overrunning? I'm thinking about, perhaps that's a question for you, how much the business case that sits behind it, the financial implications. So is it over-optimistic, and what are the implications?
I'll let Sanjay deal with the over-optimism on the build first, and then I'll come back and answer your questions.
I think we do have a very experienced design team and contractor on board with this. I myself have been doing this for quite a while as well. I'd say the programme is actually quite conservative. I think it's fair. The ICANN, we do have a lot of information on. I was actually part of the team that converted that many years ago, so I'm familiar with that building. The other two buildings I've also done bits of work on as of the contractors. We think that that date is achievable, and that will be subject to what the planners say, what the surveys come back with, but we'll keep you posted on that.
So I'll just pick up on the other aspects of your question. So if you like, the risks are, we know this is part of improving the overall sufficiency for placements for children. So any delays on this will have implications in terms of where we place some of our children. We want to keep as many of our children within the borough and as close as possible, and we want to improve the support that we can provide to our children, hence why the development of this programme. So any sort of delays, slippage on that obviously has an impact there. I'm sure you will all be aware that any delays will have some financial implications as well, because this is in-house provision, this is our provision, and therefore, you know, once we have this up and running, we are less reliant on the market in terms of, you know, providing those placements for those specific cohorts of children. One of the provisions within this development is the parent and child assessment. Now, we know that's sometimes quite an expensive resource to procure externally. And sometimes the quality of those places aren't, you know, the assessments that we get, frankly, aren't as good as we would like them to be. So we're absolutely committed to trying to keep this on this timescale. You'll all be aware that building projects are notoriously difficult to you know, navigate, you know, and there may be some bumps along the road. However, at the same time, what we're doing is we're making sure, because it's not just about the building, this is also about making sure all those regulatory steps are taken in terms of making sure that we have the staff, we have registered managers, we have all of that ready to go so that there isn't a delay, but we're going to have to time some of that quite carefully, because also we don't want to recruit too early, because then we'll have staff that we don't need. So all of that is being put into a detailed project plan. So we'll have two aspects to it really, which is, if you like, the building development, the capital part of the programme, and then underneath that, well, alongside of that, sorry, I should say, will sit, well, what we need to do in terms of making sure that we've got it registered with Ofsted, that we've got the right staff, staffing complement, and that we've got all of those things in place so that when we do go live, we are properly ready to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, as you know, I massively support this project. I think having more in-house for us is better for the children and the families. As a service provision, obviously it's better financially as well. With the project, I know that, and knowing the buildings, is it all going to be coming on stream at the same time, or is there going to be a phased element so some bits can come on stream earlier when they're ready?
I think it's going to be, it will have to be phased, but Sanjay has some more detail on this because there are certain aspects of the project which present more difficulties than others.
Yeah, so we are taking that into consideration. We're reviewing all the survey information that's coming back. There's a lot of things to consider within that. There's partially is financial viability of it in terms of if we bring part of it online earlier, obviously we're making a saving, but there will be a higher construction cost because we'll have repeat visit, remobilisation, demobilisation. Another part of that are things like the fire strategy, so which elements of the building can we bring online earlier, and if we're working on another building, are we then impeding the ability to exit that building safely and to even provide the necessary external provisions that we're required to. So that will come out probably after the planning submission's gone in. We're focusing on that at the moment to try and streamline this process as best possible. And then after that, we'll be able to, in that determination period, actually have a look at what we can and can't make work. The objective will always be to, if we can save some money earlier, we will definitely do that. The other thing is, as I understand it, that the building that saves the most money is the ICANN building, but that's the one that's going to take the longest. So, but putting in 2 applications could actually slow everything down, so it needs to go in as one, and we will take a look at what we can do and how we can phase things. But in saying that, the ICANN building does also require probably less work than the other 2 buildings as well. So there may be something we can do, but it will be that balance of time, cost, and actually functionality as well, because we don't want to open something up if we're not safeguarding or providing safe access in and out of the building.
Okay, I mean, if I can just make a comment, you know, it is a great opportunity, and Harmish has referred to the Parent and Child Assessment Unit, for example, where those sorts of facilities are quite scarce and expensive. But I would refer to the semi-independent 16+ provision, where some of the existing provision we haven't always been completely happy with, the private provision. There's been comments and criticisms from residents from time to time. In fact, I seem to remember at one point we had a full-scale debate in council about it because there was some concern about some establishments which primarily actually took children from London, not Bedford Borough children, but there was some concern. I think it's absolutely fantastic that there's going to be the 2 semi-independent 16+ provision facilities. So I know there's a lot of talk about saving money, but also it's the quality assurance of running these facilities ourselves and getting it right for these young people. I think is absolutely crucial. I think it's just a really fantastic opportunity, and we've been waiting for a while, but we're just all, you know, really in favour of it. And thanks for the work that you're doing, Sanjay, to push it along. Hilda.
Just a quick question that came to mind. Will there be an engagement event with the local community to explain what the plans are, what's going to happen? Because I know that can really help with the planning process if you really explain to the, well, involving the local councillors as well, to, yeah, what the plan is, basically.
Yes, there will be. I don't know whether councillors can recall when we first came up with the idea, we did have some engagement with ward councillors around both Gadsby Street and Bunyan Road, just to, you know, sort of gather views around what that would mean. That I'm pleased to report that was, you know, positive, and, you know, that's been supported. So I very much welcome that. But in short, yes, there will need to be communication. I am aware that have been some issues raised about the number of young people within the town centre, particularly on the Gadsby development. I mean, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. And some of those concerns have been around, you know, the safety of children. Actually, it's up to us to make sure that our town centre is safe for our children, and also that our children can access services more readily rather than, you know, living on the outskirts of town or whatever. And this is something that our young people say to us. But in answer to your question, yes, absolutely, because we need to make sure that this is supported by all of the community. So yeah, there will be. We need to have a think about how those events can take place. I think once we have so we've got an indicative timeline now, so we will build that into our sort of, if you like, our development programme around when to start some of that engagement work with the local community. And I very much welcome, you know, particularly the ward councillors that you know, where the developments are, to be engaged with that. So happy to have that conversation with them.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'll just add to that as well. In terms of the engagement, so we're looking at early July, and we are in discussions with opposite one at Gadsby Street. I can't remember what it's called. Is it the Bunyan Room? I want to say.
Yes.
Yes. So yeah, we're looking at using that as a venue space, and we do have planning consultants on board within the design team who are liaising that, and we'll liaise with our internal team as well to make sure communications are what they should be. Sorry.
Great. So if, on that note, if we can go on swiftly to talk about Bunyan Road.
Bunyan Road, this is the conversion of the existing building into a 5-bedroom children's residential home. To date, there's been 2 appointments that we've made. So this is the main contractor, which is a design and build contractor under a pre-construction service agreement, and also Pick Everard, which is the project management consultant. So to date, so far, ETEC Group, they've already completed their pre-conversion survey, so that's already done, so we have a good idea of what the building's about. They are around about 45% complete with their River Stage 3 design, so that should be ready for planning towards the end of this month. The planning for the externals, the submission for the planning externals should be submitted by the end of June, and we're expecting a decision for that around about September or October. And by the end of June, we should be able to get the contractor's cost plan to inform the next stage of the development, which is the construction phase, which should be presented to the procurement board in the August board. Given the importance of the project, and I know there's time pressures on this, we've also approached a second contractor to provide their programme and costs as well, so we can compare the two to see who can deliver more quickly for us. So with after the procurement board, the construction phase for the internal area is expected to start at the end of August. The completion for the project should be April 27 at the very latest, but we're hoping to bring that forward. We'll know more about that once we've completed the River Stage 3 design.
And planning should be more straightforward, because we're not talking about a change of use, are we?
Yeah, I mean, the planning involved. Yeah, sorry. The planning involved on this is just really for an external link to connect an external building and the main building to provide an extra bedroom. That should be. I mean, the annex and the external link is at behind the main building, so there shouldn't be any planning issues with that. The other areas for planning are for the external landscaping in the front, which consists of an external ramp into the front of the building. The good thing is that this is not a listed building and it's not in a conservation area, so we're not expected to have any issues.
Thank you. Are any other questions, Carl?
Yeah, there's a question actually. Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you. Firstly, let me say this is a good news story. The building has been standing empty now for many years actually, which has caused problems in terms of antisocial behaviour, vandalism, just generally looking a mess, to be honest with you. To bring the home back into use and for it to help children with complex needs is something we all need to support and promote. And I think, you know, we all should be proud of that. However, speaking as a ward councillor, because Bunyan Road is in my ward, I think we need to seriously consider, and we've touched on this already, I think, but we need to seriously consider how we communicate with nearby residents, it's fair to say, who have had issues and serious concerns in the past when it was up and running as a children's home. Far too often you'd see the police there, which was not a good look for the Borough Council or the home, to be honest with you. So I think we need to bring the residents on board. I have every confidence that moving forward the home will be run properly and there won't be any serious issues. However, I think nearby residents will need to be provided with some comfort and reassurances regarding the running of the home and how we intend to be neighbourly. We need to demonstrate that it's going to be run more like a family home as opposed to an institution. So I think that's where we've had problems in the past, if I'm honest. And continuous dialogue with residents before and after the home reopens needs to be a priority. I note from the report that the completion of the work should be April next year, which should give us plenty of time to deal with communications and addressing concerns. As a ward councillor, I'd like to be fully involved in that, which we've talked about already, and I'm sure the committee would like to be fully involved, and even a site visit would be useful. But I think to bring the residents on board is a good thing to do. I think it will help the planning process as well, if I'm honest. So I think there is some work to be done there. So if we could work together on that, I'd be really grateful. Thank you. I think there was a question there somewhere, but yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Meader. That's really helpful, and I'm really pleased that you welcome this development. I completely understand perhaps some of the concerns that the local community have had. As you mentioned, that particular building was run as a children's home before. I'll say not, because of those reasons, that's the reason it was closed down. This is a different cohort of children, and the support and care that they will require will mean there will be a different approach. But I think first of all, I welcome your support, and absolutely we'll be in touch around sort of any communication out to the community around how the home will be run, and absolutely we intend this to be part of the community and the children to be part of that community. So it's really vital that we do that work, and that isn't just a one-off event. This, same with Gadsby Street, that our children will be there for some time and they will be part of that community. So it's only right that there is some continued dialogue. But before we open, absolutely to allay any sort of concerns or anxieties that the local community may have, we're happy to sort of do some engagement events around, talking about which children will be there, how they'll be supported, how the home will be run. Again, as I said before, we will be running this, so we have more control over the standards, which we absolutely expect there to be a high standard of care for our children, but also that means a high standard of care towards the community and how that home is integrated into the community, because that's only to the benefit of those children and also the community.
I mean, if I could emphasise that point, I mean, it's a different cohort of children. This will be children with complex needs. The previous children's home was a children's home, and as Harmesh said, an outside organisation ran that home, and they failed at Ofsted basically, and that was when the home was closed. But this is we're talking about running it with our own staff, and I mean, it's fair to say that we've got a fantastic record, because I mean, certainly the existing homes, the respite homes, are both on outstanding, aren't they? I think outstanding Ofsted. So we have, Bedford Borough has got an extremely good record. Okay. Any other comments? Then we'll move on. Thank you for that, and thank you very much for the presentation. Really appreciate it. Thanks to both of you for coming along. Okay, so if we go on to item 10, so that's Bedford Borough Best Start Strategy, and over to you, Wendy.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to bring the Bedford Borough Best Start Strategy 25-29 to this committee this evening for your scrutiny. I think it's important that I bring to your attention that this is being developed with partners across health, education and the voluntary sector, and most importantly with families themselves. It represented a genuine whole system commitment So it's not just a council document, it is a whole system document, and I think that's an important step change. So I think it's just important that we kind of note that this document now will supersede what was previously known as the early years strategy. So the Best Start strategy is now the strategy for early years. And it is one strategy which brings everything together into one place. And the 6 priorities are, as you can see from the report, early identification, prevention and timely support, important. Supporting parental mental health and emotional well-being. Promoting equity and reducing inequality. High quality, inclusive and accessible early years provision. Empowering parents as their child's first and most enduring educator. And strengthening collaboration across services. Early years and giving our children the best start in Bedford Borough is a joint effort across all services, and this is bringing that into one place. And indeed, this report will be going to Executive and will be going to the Health and Wellbeing Board, I think, indeed, this week. So, I think it's just important that we highlight for you as the committee what is genuinely new. You will know that I have been in post since 2014 as the manager for early years. So, you know, it's really, well, I think it's what we need to understand actually is those systems that have the best impact on their early years are those that have consistency and consistency in approach and are, you know, gradually improving. I think it's really important. But we do have some work to do because the government, as we know, have given us and indeed all local authorities a target to ensure that every child reaches a good level of development by the end of the foundation stage. And you'll see from other reports that you've received this evening where we are at as a local authority in that. So we don't want to be sitting back and saying that we're doing okay, because actually whilst it might show green, we have some work to do to get that to that 75% target. So we have some genuinely new things within this strategy. Parental mental health as a standalone priority. For the first time, we want to really highlight that. Parental mental health and emotional well-being is absolutely critical if we are to support children to have their best start. A parent's well-being is inseparable from their child's. We're committing to accessible perinatal mental health services. This is across the partnership. Upskilling our workforce to spot early indicators and embedding a digital offer so parents can get support when they need it, including low-level and early-stage needs that can otherwise go unmet. We are looking to introduce a Best Start Academy of inclusive skills and knowledge. We have a fantastic early years workforce here in Bedford Borough. The majority of our early years settings are judged to be of a really high standard by Ofsted. However, making sure that our dedicated professional development offer for our early years workforce is the strongest it can be is an absolute commitment that we want to have, and we really want to strengthen that and invest in that. We want to actually have a Best Start data dashboard. We want to make sure that we understand our data, and whilst we do have data, you can see it in the reports before you this evening, we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can across the partnership to strengthen that data. And indeed, this strategy will have with it an action plan which the partners are putting in place by the end of this term, and you will, I'm sure, Chair, want to see that action plan in the autumn term when it's been finalised by the partners. Structured co-production with families is really important. It's critical to us, and we want to embed the work of the Family Hub parent carer panels to ensure that parental voice is robust and really influences the work that we do within the early years space. And it's a genuine shift for us towards them actually working alongside us to co-design and develop services. And so obviously the statutory context for everybody on this committee is that we move towards the ambition of ensuring that Bedford Borough's children all have a good level of development of 75% at the end of the time period. So I really would just want to commend this strategy to you, and I would welcome your questions. And my colleague behind me between us, because this is actually a shared strategy that sits across my area and the Service Directors for Education. We share this. We are happy to respond to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Philippa.
Sorry. Thank you very much. I mean, I think in terms of the aims, it would be very hard to disagree with any of them. I think they are the right aims. I think my question is, though, is about the accountability. So I'm thinking particularly around the parental mental health, for example. It sounds great, but we all know that people do struggle to access mental health services in the borough more than we would all like. So how is there accountability to making sure that those services are actually being provided by the partner organisations?
Thank you for your question. So we have a board that is a partnership board that meets and has governance over the priorities and the actions that will be developed underneath. So that, as I've already alluded to, the action plan is being developed still. However, we know that within our, for example, our 0 to 19 service, they have mandated visits, and actually built into their commission is the work to ensure that parents are spoken to, are given the support that they need, and are given every opportunity to be signposted and supported to access. What we're also doing is wanting to increase, through our Family Hubs work, the outreach available, so that we can connect people earlier and support them to access services. We know that it's all very good just having the services there, but actually it takes courage sometimes to ask for the support and then to step over the threshold to get that support. So we want to do everything we can to break down some of those barriers that we have with as services. We can, as services, be hard to reach. Families are not hard to reach. Actually, us as services can be. And actually finding ways actually to support parents to engage in different ways is really important. We're also doing a lot to develop the digital offer. I think it's really important now in 2026 that we are doing everything we can to strengthen that, because actually some of those times when parents feel at their lowest and most vulnerable is in the middle of the night, when a large number of people might be asleep. And actually to be able to go on and actually go through our digital front door, which is what we're looking, to have in place, will be really important. In addition to that, though, it's making sure that those services that people find when they've gone through that digital front door are ones which give them good quality information and advice, and not something random. So with our partners, again, making sure that we've got everybody from our colleagues in Elft and the 0 to 19 health services all contributing to make sure that information is high quality.
Can I come in?
Yes, please.
I think just if I can equate it to, so a couple of things. One of the reasons why, yes, the best start in life aligns with government, where we've been asked to do, but actually I think it's purposefully not called the early years strategy now, and recognise, as you see, actually in many of these areas we talk about cross-directorate support, but also not cross-directorate, but true partnership. But I think when we have challenges such as it's an epidemic of mental health and the stigma that's still attached to some of our seeking of support, or identifying or talking about actually many new parents struggling, and many parents struggling with their mental health, it isn't helpful as a system. And I think we recognise this, and we've got a really good partnership to go, actually, well, more access to that service over there, that's what needs to happen. It is a collective, as Wendy said, and I think actually the dashboard and the work that we're putting together in partnership is that system going, yes, we know that actually access to specialist services is crucial and is needed, but it is also around those key touch points that we have with our families, and be that through family helps, be that through our earlier settings, be that through actually a conversation at the Citizen Advice Bureau, or anything along those lines of actually just are you okay, and knowing where to signpost families to if they're not, is something that we know. It's because actually where this falls down, and I link it very much to some of the work that we've gone through in the special educational needs space, where we work very closely with our partners in health, is yes, there's a statutory duty for services to be provided from some of our statutory partners, but we absolutely need to be part of that, sort of going, how can we help? How can we support? How can we be as early as we can? How can we take some of those early conversations and make sure we're signposting? And I think what we're really excited by through our Best Start strategy is that pulling together of going, actually, this is everybody's responsibility and everybody's business. And also just getting any messages or any key things. Well, we do a lot of really good messaging in our early years, but the recognising going, actually, it's okay to not be okay and actually to ask for help, I think is a really powerful message. I know we've had similar conversations in this space in various different areas when we've talked about in that Best Start, and I can talk from my own personal experiences, you know, of being that parent in the middle of the night, seeking support and going onto Facebook groups or going onto different areas and actually getting some really random advice from different people. We want to make sure that there's a trusted source of knowledge that people can turn to. And I think, you know, through the work that we've already done through our family hubs and the digital offer we have, there's more that we can be doing. But I think there's so many things throughout the strategy. And yes, we're presenting it here at Children's Services over in Scrutiny, but I'd love to see this on other overdue scrutiny committees as well, because actually this should be all of our responsibility, how we're pushing this through our leisure strategies, how we're pushing this through our housing, how we're pushing this through our, our culture, and as you see, those key partners are in there. So yeah, I think it's beholden on all of us to make sure that we're pushing the strategy, and I think this is a helpful touchstone to pull that together. But what I'm also really keen on, I know, you know, Wendy's exactly the same, was the question for our partners is how can we help? With regards to what I was recognising there is struggles with accessing services, I think, as you've pointed out, Councillor Martin and Brian.
Yeah, how will this strategy support the children and families from the most disadvantaged backgrounds? So how will you ensure that investment is targeted?
Thank you, Councillor Hendricks. So obviously the commitment is to ensure that all those most vulnerable have access to a 2-year-old funded place and funded 3- and 4-year-old places, which are of the highest quality. We remain committed to that, and indeed our take-up rate is pretty good in all of those areas. For me, it's about how do we make sure through the work of the family hubs that we are targeting those who most need our help from those vulnerable communities. And you know from my previous presentations to this committee around the outreach workers and the link workers getting out there into the communities and really getting alongside those families and also working with our partners in health. So one of the things that we're now looking at is with health putting in place a post which actually looks at those families who are not taking up their opportunities to engage with health early and to understand what that is about. And of course, recognising this is all consent-based, but we want to do everything we can to know who those families are and to try everything we can to get alongside them as early as possible to break down any barriers, be it language, be it accessing services, be it, you know, I've talked around, you know, the confidence to come over the threshold. You know, we're making sure that our staff as well is diverse and represents communities within the early years. That's really important. We remain really strongly committed to that, and we have really good opportunities to, again, as well, increase our volunteering. So with the work of our family hubs, they have some amazing volunteers from the community and looking to enhance that opportunity as well, so people are connecting with people from their community. So there's a number of strategies which will come through in the action plan within the relevant section of you know, obviously reducing inequalities within the plan that you will see that will come forward in that way.
Paul, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for this report, Wendy, and everything looks really interesting. It was just a curiosity about the dashboard. What sort of information will it display? What sort of stuff is available? Is it just activity, or does it show things like equity and, you know, partner accountability?
So I intend to really think about, for example, the journey of the child, if you like, from the antenatal phase right through to, you know, that transition into school. So thinking about bringing together the health data that they have. Our health colleagues are are superb with their data, and really utilising that and bringing that to the table more, so that we're really breaking down the barriers around information sharing and understanding each other's data. So, for example, we know we have new birth data, and we can reach, and we giving those families with new babies the information that they need about services that are available to them. But we really want to then understand, well, how many of those families take up services. So again, from me presenting at previous committees about Family Hub's data, Family Hubs are fantastic. We are rich in data. So bringing that as well together. So if we've got all of that health data, we've got early years special educational needs data, which Chris can talk more about. We've got Family Hubs data. We've got transition, with our brilliant transitions work in early years. How many children are going into school with that brilliant transitions completed? How many of them settle in well and are really on track then? So what do we know about those children then before they go into school? How on track are they? So I'm leaping about a little bit, but as it comes into my mind, for example, integrated reviews. How many children have attended that integrated review, and if they haven't, why not, and what is that about, and what does that tell us about those families that most need our support? So for me, it's about bringing all of that data, because we have a lot of it, and actually it's bringing it together in one place and really using it effectively to make sense and target where we most need. So going back to Councillor Hendrick's point about those families that most need us, those who are perhaps not accessing services, really analysing our data to understand that need more and bring it together. So that's what I'm hoping from that work. The data is there, it just needs to be in one place.
Can I come in?
But correct, please.
I mean, I can talk data for hours, I won't. But early years data for me is one of the defining factors of around actually where integration is the key. So, for example, I could look at 0 to 19 health visiting data, and I can tell you how many children failed an area of an ages and stages questionnaire, which is the assessment that's taken at 2.5-year-old. So there's the different domains parents filled in and said, is your child able to meet these different things, and can you do that? And they talk about that at population level. So, for example, about 80% of children will meet all 5 domains, but about 20% won't. Now, the challenge is we also then know how many children have good levels of development when they start school, but we don't compare the two. So, for example, I would love to be able to say, well, actually, if we know how many children are meeting good levels of development, how many of them were we identified at 2.5? We don't. We don't have a linkage between the two. Yet we have a really rich data set from health. We have a really rich data set of who's accessing our family hubs. We have a really rich data set from within our early years who do 2-year-old reviews. They don't have to submit it into us anymore. I wish they still did. But we have all these separate data sets, so we're really data rich, but intelligence poor. And that's the really frustrating thing about actually through this dashboard is we can identify in our cohorts, but we don't know whether we're talking about the same children or different children. And that would be an example, as Wendy said, because actually, if you think about that transition work that we have for children starting school, how great would it be if we were able to say, actually, at 2.5, 3-year-olds going, in 2 years' time, the cohorts coming into school are going to really need additional support in one of these 5 domains because we know they're not. And actually, then we've got a much better shot of hitting our 75% target of good levels of development if we're able to tailor our resources and not have that first term trying to get to know our kids. We can make that transition even stronger. So that's one example, as well as the tailoring of resource, looking at ward level data or not. As I said, in terms of this is not beyond the power, the realms of possibility. This is within our gift to do. It's around making sure that GDPR, using most likely going to be the NHS number as a data linkage and all those things. So that sort of nerdy stuff I can go into, but in terms of it's more around actually that really will enable us to target those resources, but also not just on those individual children, but also make sure we're getting it right in starting school and beyond, and looking at that tracking data, but also even earlier, thinking about some of our data from midwife visits, or there's so much there, it's just linking it through. And if we can track the journey of that child, I think we get some really rich intelligence. We aren't able to do that just yet. So does that help with kind of give both with all this sort of data, but also where I think there's some really powerful things that we can really start to do by using that sort of patient identifiable number, which is what the NHS would call it. So that's sort of that PID for us to be able to track that through.
It's okay, I do nerd and data, I do that. So sorry if this is a dumb question, is there an AI component to this?
not currently in that, so we don't. I think in any data dashboard that's been developed, there wouldn't be at the moment. There's no talk, I think, with our colleagues. I think it's probably more around that universal lookup. So I know certainly our colleagues in the NHS have been working very hard on creating dashboards and doing things like creating the data lake for them to have those data from all their different systems and put it through. We'd probably look at utilising that, so importing our data into that to make sure there's a key lookup to identify. So, for example, if we know a child's address and date of birth, for example, and we have consent, then we'll be able to get their NHS number, which will be able to then track through to see which systems they're in. So, not currently any views to utilise AI. However, that would be for our analytics performance team and colleagues within East of England NHS Trust performance team to look into how that could be done.
Thank you for that. And just a question from me, actually, Wendy. I mean, would you agree that implementing the Best Start strategy it does help in Bedford Borough, because we already have thriving family hubs, so that must have surely given us a head start in that sense.
Thank you, Chair. Bedford Borough should be proud of its commitment to early years, and we continue to be committed to giving every child in Bedford Borough a best start. This strategy strengthens that, brings it all together, and we remain committed to the work of the family hubs and to the brilliant work that all of the services, actually, our 0 to 19 service, our mental health services, our voluntary sector, all services that work within the space to actually engage with families as early as possible and give our children the best start. So again, Chair, I commend this strategy to you and Bedford Borough's commitment to giving every child the best start.
Thanks very much. Any comments? So if I can just go back to the recommendations, which perhaps I should read out. They're on, so that's on page 36 of the document, and it's page 40 of the PDF. So the recommendation, the Children's Overview and Scrutiny Committee is recommended to consider, and if satisfied, to A, approve the Bedford Borough Best Start Strategy 2026-2029 as the overarching strategic framework for early years and family support across the borough. B, note the alignment of the strategy with the national Giving Every Child the Best Start in Life strategy and associated local policy drivers. C, endorse the 6 strategic priorities and 3 cross-cutting themes set out in the strategy. D, note that a detailed delivery plan will be developed for each priority area with named leads identified for each. And E, agree that progress will be monitored through the Best Start data dashboard and reported annually to the Children's Health and Wellbeing Partnership Group. So, the committee happy with the recommendations? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for really input, Wendy and Chris. So if we go on to the final substantive report, which is about Yarlswood and about the one in, one out asylum system and how it's working out. Thank you.
And on that note, I'm going to hand over to Mel Field, our head of Parenting Together, only because Mel has taken the operational lead on this matter.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I won't go through every line of the report. The purpose of bringing the report this evening is for the committee to understand some of the most recent developments that's happened in Bedford and how that has contributed to a change in our responsiveness in terms of separated migrant children and young people who have been placed in Yarlswood who are age disputed and referred to us for consideration of accommodation pending further assessment of their age. It is part of the government pilot scheme. It is something that came to our awareness at the early stages of April, and very quickly we've begun to see referrals coming in to us. We wanted to highlight within the report the pressures that that's placing upon us. It's multifaceted in terms of, obviously, we need to first and foremost safeguard children in our borough. That's our first priority. But from an operational perspective, this was unpredicted and therefore we didn't have an opportunity to plan for the number of referrals that came in over a very short space of time. So to put it into context, we would normally expect to see through the National Transfer Scheme, on average per cycle, one young person referred to us, we would be responsive, and we had capacity to meet that need. Excuse me, over the period of time, we've now gone up to 20 referrals that have come through to us, and of those, 12 are now accommodated. So that then places in increased operational pressure in terms of social work capacity, because of the work that's required by us, quite rightly so, to follow our processes as we would do for any other looked after child, and to ensure the holistic needs of that young person is met, to identify appropriate accommodation, to place them in that accommodation, etc. Health assessments, so there's a need for every looked after young person to have an assessment of their health, and so that obviously then creates an unpredicted demand on our health colleagues, education and so forth. It does increase financial pressures to us, because obviously we accommodate, so each accommodation comes at a cost. On average, we're looking at about £950 per week per young person. We are able to reclaim some funding from the Home Office, but that doesn't go as far as the expenses that the local authority pays. For all of those young people who have been accommodated, it's been on the basis of benefit of the doubt, and so that's in accordance with our guidance, meaning that we need to undertake further, more detailed and thorough assessment of those young people. In Bedford, we don't have the number of staff and capacity of staff who are trained to undertake those really complex and really important assessments for those young people. And so we are working with the National Age Assessment Board to support us with that. They can support us. They've offered us 2 assessments per month, so we can make 2 referrals per month of young people, but obviously the maths, we've got 11 young people that have come in over a very, very short space of time. So our other option for ensuring those assessments are completed within a timely way, and that's really important for their needs, so we need to understand their journey, we need to understand their support needs, and we need to understand, importantly, actually, are they an adult or are they a child? Because obviously we're in a situation where these young people are accommodated in accommodation for children, so we do have those wider safeguarding responsibilities as well. So our other option with those assessments is to commission those independently through independent social workers, which we can do, but again that comes at a cost to the local authority. And so it's creating pressures in a number of different areas, which we are doing our very best to manage in a context which Harmesh has already explained in relation to recruitment and retention, because as a result of that we have seen some quite rapid change within the team that actually look after our separated migrant children, meaning that we are now needing to replace some staff who've chosen to go and work elsewhere.
Thank you very much. Paul.
Thank you, Mel. First off, I'd like to say that I was pleased to hear that you'd be open to speaking to Beyond Detention on this. There was 2 things that spring to mind. One is, is there any specific training that your teams are having to go through to deal with people who have been through these the trauma of having to seek asylum? And then the other one is, you mentioned previously that you felt that the government hadn't actually kind of realised that actually Bedford is quite a small council compared to, say, Kent County Council. I assume, is there any way of pushing back against that?
Yes, there is. So in terms of, I'll answer the training. Yes, there is specific training. All of our social work practice is trauma informed, but I think the specific trauma for children who've undertaken a very, very difficult journey over often many, many months in really horrible circumstances, it is really important that our social workers do understand that. So we do engage with the training that's on offer for us. We work really closely with Home Office colleagues. They will always send us out training, and we do always encourage our social workers to undertake that training. We're in a bit of a repair situation at the moment because we've had that churn of workers. So we are bringing in new social workers as quickly as we can, and as soon as they're coming in, then they will be trained. But we are also looking for trained and experienced social workers who have worked successfully with separated migrant children as well, because they will help to that peer learning as well within the team. But we have got some repair work to do around that, and to develop the team's resilience and ability to support our children. I'm not for 1 minute saying their needs aren't being supported. They absolutely are. We're drawing on the expertise from outside of that team in our leaving care team, for example. So the needs of our separated children are being met, but there is more we need to do to ensure that we are more resilient. And that comes back to your next point about us being very small. I've met with the Home Office a number of times, and I'm meeting with them fortnightly. Harmesh and I met last week with senior Home Office officials to explain the detail in terms of our ability to meet the need to continue our work with all of our children, but to meet this unexpected need, which obviously we are doing, and we are pulling together as best as we can as a network to ensure that people get the support that they need by the right service area.
I suppose the other thing as well is that there's going to be, is there a risk, that there would be some impact on what we were speaking about earlier, the improvement plans and what have you, the capacity within children's services?
I think to answer that, yes, there is an impact because it wasn't expected. So we had a very clear trajectory for our improvement work. We've just come out of the focused visit. That was in the area of permanence, children in our care, leaving care. So we have had to divert some of our attention because of the demand to home finding searches. So that's looking for places for our young people to live. The placement of them. We work really closely with Yarlswood as well to ensure that release happens as seamlessly as possible, because that's quite a process that needs to be followed. So it has got in the way a little bit, I would say, of our improvement work. That doesn't mean to say that we've taken our foot off the pedal. We know what we need to do and how we need to do it, but our focus has been elsewhere. And as I say, we've got a lot of work taking place in recruitment at the moment.
Yeah, perhaps it's a suggestion. It feels like we really need to put some pressure on the Home Office, and that there's almost some lobbying to be done. So I wonder whether we could put forward as a recommendation from the committee to ask the Mayor and the Chief Executive or the portfolio holder and the Director to write to the Home Office to highlight this issue and ask for extra support and resources to deal with the extra demand. And similarly, we could ask our MP to do the same, because this is a policy that clearly has consequences for us as a local council, and we're taking our responsibility, and I'm sure you're looking after the separated migrant children, but we also have to recognise the impact that has on children's services, and we almost need to demand extra resources from the Home Office. They can't just almost dump this on us, I feel.
And if I could jump in quickly, I have written to the MP, and I'll be following that up. So I wrote on behalf of the committee.
But I would like to put that forward as a formal recommendation from the committee.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Hendricks. Yes, I'd welcome that. As Mel said, with a meeting with Senior Home Office officials last week, and I made our position really clear, we are sending them further information, which will be completed probably in the next day, on what the impact is. So we gave them that information. They were sympathetic to the pressures that it's caused for the system. My position was, well, then that needs to be translated into some support. You know, we take our corporate parenting responsibilities to these young people very seriously. We want to provide them with a good service. The reality is that it is continuing to have, will continue to have an impact, and therefore there is a request for direct support. As I say, I've had that conversation. We'll be following up on that conversation. I've also had that conversation with DfE officials as well. And I've encouraged both DfE officials and officials within the Home Office to have a level of communication around this because of the impact, overall impact on children's services. But yes, so I'd welcome any support in that, making that message even clearer. But we will be following that up within the next 24 to 48 hours.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. First of all, I totally support your suggestion, Councillor Hendricks. Absolutely, we should, to support the work that you are doing in engaging with the government. I just wanted to clarify which MP we're talking about, actually, because, of course, we're represented by 3, and Yarl's Wood is in Richard Fuller's constituency. So I think we should write to all 3. Exactly. I think that would be really helpful if we could add that. I mean, I am extremely concerned, like everybody else, about the impact of this sudden change on Bedford Borough. We've already got our improvement plan that we have to implement. We already have financial issues, and I am really concerned that the government has, I feel, dumped this on us. You said it's a pilot. Do we have a timescale for how long they will, this pilot will last? And my second question is, looking at the information we've got here, it seems about half of the cases have been determined that they were children and wrongly identified as adults by other areas, and half been determined as being adults. Are they coming from one certain area, and are we able to feed back to those other areas if other councils aren't doing the assessments properly? That's quite a concern to me as well, because it would seem to me, if I was being cynical, that you could basically dump the problem on Bedford because we happen to have Yarl's Wood, and that's really not the right approach for children, and it's not a right approach for Bedford Borough either. So I'm just concerned about the system.
Thank you. So in terms of how long the pilot is going to be continuing for, we're informed that it will go through to the autumn. So it's been extended to the autumn, and so from the conversations that we've had, we believe that could potentially go into sort of the latter part of October. Is what we're anticipating. In terms of the process, I don't know if it's helpful for me to just describe. So the people who are placed at Yarl's Wood have initially presented as adults. So they've either given an adult date of birth at the point of arrival, or they've been assessed at that point in time by immigration officers as an adult. The majority of the referrals that we've received, people have previously claimed to be an adult, and then when at Yarl's Wood, when sort of settled, have then said, actually, this is my age or this is my date of birth. And that's when those referrals come to us. So other local authorities haven't made a prior assessment. For some of our young people who've come through, they've been here for a very, very short space of time, and they've come straight from sort of Kent, come into Yarl's Wood. Everybody's circumstance is different, but that's the slight difference when we're talking to the Home Office. That's slightly different to usually how our separated children are referred into us, and that's linked particularly to that pilot. But in relation to that initial sort of assessment, within the guidance that we're all to follow, if a young person is considered perhaps over 18 but not significantly over 18, then the benefit of the doubt should be given for a further, more comprehensive assessment to be undertaken, because we have to remember that the journey has been traumatic, and often those initial decisions are made at a point where people are at the latter part of that really traumatic journey. And so therefore an assessment that's reliable at that stage isn't always.
Thank you very much, and thank you Mel for the report and all the work you're doing under quite difficult circumstances. I'm sure we really appreciate it. So if we go on to item 7 to, I beg your pardon, put my glasses on, item 12 to consider any call-ins. I don't think we've got any call-ins today. Item 13, executive. 1, to note that no decisions which fall within the remit of this committee were taken by the executive at its meeting held on the 8th of April. To note the decision which falls within the remit of this committee, which was taken by the executive at its meeting held on 22nd of April, which is was in fact the reference from this committee, which was on the progress of the improvement plan and the sufficiency of placements. Roman 3, to note that a decision which falls within the remit of this committee is due to be taken by the executive at its meeting, or has been taken, should I say, by the executive at its meeting held on the 3rd of June. And that was the Best Start strategy, which went to the executive. And 4, Roman 4, to note that no individual executive decisions have been made since the last meeting of the committee which fall within the remit of this committee. So item 14, notice of forthcoming decisions taken by the executive to consider a summary of items included in the notice of forthcoming decisions. So I would draw your attention to one item, which is the customer services feedback. So that's due on the 16th of September, which is an annual report of complaints and items of praise which comes to the executive. So to go on to the committee work programme, to consider the committee's work programme for 2026-2027.
Sorry, Chair, I don't think it really matters. I just wanted to say that obviously I was on the executive at the time that executive decision was made, so I just wanted to make that clear for the minutes. I'm not quite sure what I need to do. It's just noting it, but I just wanted to be transparent about it.
Thank you very much. That's really appreciated. So if we go on to the work programme, so we're looking at the 13th of July, it's page 86 of the pack or page 90 of the PDF. So what we've got on for the 13th of July is the progress on the Children's Services Improvement Plan as per what we've been discussing, and I think Harmesh, you said you're going to look at some of that, the way in which we present it, perhaps to make it a bit more comprehensible for next time. We have permanent exclusions and alternative provision to receive a report outlining permanent exclusion protocols and procedures, including opportunities for intervention and the alternative provision offering the borough, and certainly for those of us as school governors, this is of acute interest. It's extremely painful to have to be involved in permanent exclusions, as I've had to be from time to time over the years. So we did request a report from the PRU, and if possible, Chris, if the head teacher for the PRU could come to the meeting, that would be really fantastic. I don't know whether we've made any progress to that in terms of issuing an invitation.
So obviously our pupil referral unit is where we provide section 19 day 6 education once a child has been permanently excluded. If the report, as my understanding of the request, was to receive a report on permanent exclusions and the work being done to try and reduce permanent exclusions, I'm just trying to clarify as to what would be why would we want the report to be from the PRU or have the PRU here, just so I can get the point of clarification. I mean, I'm happy to bring the report, I'm just trying to work out, just don't want to make sure that obviously inviting an external colleague to come in, just being really clear on what it is that we're asking either the head teacher or the CEO of the trust to come in and report on.
I think from a school governor point of view, it's that when permanent exclusion decisions are made, it's getting behind the what's happening to that young person. In other words, so it's a journey. I mean, certainly what schools should do is they should continue to take an interest in that child, even when they're permanently excluded. But it's to look in more depth as to what's happening when children are excluded. Obviously, we wish to reduce or eliminate exclusions if we possibly can, but when they are excluded, I think that's the interest as to where they're going and what's happening to them. Sorry, did you have a point?
Oh, no, it was just to say that it's exactly that I wanted to know what happens next. We hear about exclusions, but then what happens?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's helpful clarification. I'm meeting with the CEO tomorrow, so I can request that my head of inclusion and appropriate things. So I think it would probably be really rich to do a report on the work that we've been doing to try and reduce permanent exclusions, the restructure of our inclusion service and the focus on our offer, as well as what our offer is for what's called our statutory day 6 education and the outcomes that we get through our pupil referral unit, whilst recognising that we want to minimise the number of permanent exclusions that we have. We also want to make sure that the support that we put in place for those that have been permanently excluded is of the highest quality, which we are pretty sure it is. So yeah, that's helpful clarification. Thank you. I'll make sure we...
Thank you, Chris. And then the other item on the agenda is commissioning placements, residential care costs. To receive a report setting out the arrangements for the commissioning placements, including contractual and framework agreements with providers, as well as oversight of unregistered placements. And again, Jonathan, there was a suggestion to invite the placement officer to... Harmesh, you want to say something?
So I was just going to make a suggestion. I'm not sure it's a placements officer who's the right, but we can certainly look at it's probably our commissioning support that's probably best placed to attend. And also just a clarification on because it talks about residential care and then in the details it talks about a report setting out the range of commissioning placements. Now we can cover both, but obviously residential placements are a specific area. So perhaps what the committee might be helpful, we cover all of them in terms of these are the arrangements for commissioning placements. This is how we do residentials. I know there's specific reference to unregistered placements, so we can cover all that if that would be helpful.
Yeah, there was just one additional item I wanted either a verbal report on or a report on the next meeting, which was the new staffing structure, because that should be public by then, I assume. So I would just want to see an overview of the changes and what changes were made and why.
If it would help, we can cover that on progress on the Children's Services Improvement Plan. So we can show you what the structure was before and then obviously the proposed structure and the structure that we're now recruiting into, because that is effectively part of our improvement journey. Sorry, Chair. I'm just conscious, looking at the work programme, that we haven't as yet. Oh, no, it's on for October. Obviously, we've had a youth justice inspection, and that report has been published. I just throwing it out there to the committee as to whether or not you would like that sooner rather than later.
Whenever it's appropriate. I mean, as it comes out, really, that would make sense, wouldn't it?
The report's been published.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's on the agenda for October. I was just wondering whether committee would like to have that pulled forward or not. To September. Okay.
Separate point is just that obviously Wendy kindly said about the action plan's the best start. We haven't got that on there, and I just think it might be useful to put it on for October or November, otherwise we might forget. So
October, if possible, then that will, because November I'm looking like I'm quite busy here with you in November. So October would be good, just space it out a bit.
I think November is perfect, actually. I was going to say, I always never know when to say things or not, and I think Ellie's looking at me and going, don't say anything, Chris. But I was going to come in on the point around it's not an executive decision, and it isn't quite a forthcoming decision, so I didn't quite know what to do. But just to make this committee aware, if you're not already, we do have an informal consultation open at this moment in time around the social emotional mental health special school. So you'll have seen the purchase of the St. Joseph's building that has now gone through. We do have a consultation that is open, so I didn't quite know whether to stick it or not. Ellie's nodding at me, which is a good sign. So just to make members aware, because it is looking at closing this week, I believe. So yeah, just please do. It is literally a two-question consultation, I think. So with free text that people can put in more. So if members do want to engage, please do.
Thank you very much. If there's nothing else,
Just not related, slightly off gender, if I may, and it's only a comment stroke question, observation. I know as committees we have to take what rooms are available, but I don't know what other members think, but I just personally think that this committee works so much better in a committee room. It does feel a little bit, I'm going to be honest, it feels a bit like them and us looking across the floor, and that's not the way this committee's ever worked, and nor should it work that way, to be fair. So it's just an observation stroke question. It really would be good to have a committee room next time.
I mean, if I could say, we've gone round the houses on this a few times. So there was a specific query raised about from a member who was hard of hearing, and the problem in committee room 1 is there are no microphones, and people have to speak. If people are prepared to speak up, then that's great. But there is the problem in the council chamber that I'm constantly missing. Hilda, for example, is on my left, you know, or whatever. So it isn't the friendliest environment for a relatively small group. So Ellie, we've been going around the houses, haven't we, on this one? And I suppose we will continue to. But Harmish.
I was just going to say I completely agree with Councillor Mina's comments. It was due to some technical difficulties in committee room 1, which is the room that we normally use. Yes, it is much better when we're able to sit around the table and have that conversation, and I'm certainly sure it's easier to chair. So hopefully we'll be able to resolve that for the next meeting. But yes, point taken.
Thank you.
We'll continue to talk with committee services about the ins and outs, and I'm sure we'll come up with good solutions. So thank you all very much. Next meeting on the 13th of July. We've gone slightly over what we would anticipate to end at 8:30, but thank you all for your contributions. It's really appreciated, especially the officers.